Hello, Goods and Grizzlies. This is Miss Brown, and this is going to be a review video over counting atoms. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to identify the different parts of this chemical formula, and then I'm going to show you how to count the atoms, and then we'll do some practice with several different chemical equations. Okay. So all of these letters are, of course, are elements from the periodic table. All right. So when you have a chemical formula, the number underneath, the little number under is called a subscript. Okay. So if you think subscript, submarine, a submarine goes under, it's the little number underneath. And it tells you the number of atoms. Okay. So for the potassium, there's 2 atoms. For oxygen, there are 3 atoms. Now, very, very important. If there is no subscript, it means 1. So you don't put 0, it means 1 if there's no subscript. Okay? So there is 1 atom of carbon. Okay? Now, this big number in front is called the coefficient. Okay, that's coefficient. So when you are counting atoms, you look at your subscripts, but you also have to look at your coefficient. So what I'm going to do is a little bit of practice with the chemical formulas that don't have a coefficient, and then we'll go back and look at some with a coefficient. Okay, so let's take this one right here. Let's see, which one do I want to do? All right, so we're going to do. Okay, so this is the chemical formula. Okay, so we want to know how many nitrogen and how many oxygen. Okay, this is how I do it. What I tend to do is draw lines in front of my capital letters to separate them out. So I know that I have a nitrogen and an oxygen. So now you just look at the subscripts underneath. So the subscript here is 4, and the subscript here is 10. So I have 4 atoms of nitrogen and 10 atoms of oxygen. Okay. All right, let's do another one. All right. So I'm going to draw lines in front of my capital letters. So I have Na, which is sodium, and this is Cl, which is chlorine. Okay, so now I look at my subscripts to see how many atoms of each. There are no subscripts, so that means 1. So I have 1 atom of sodium, 1 atom of chlorine. Okay, let's try another one. Okay, so I have this formula. So I draw lines in front of my capital letters. So I have Fe, which is iron, and I have O, which is oxygen. So I look at my subscripts. I have 2 atoms of iron, 3 atoms of oxygen. Now I can go a step further. If I want to know the total atoms, you just add it together and you have 5 total. Okay, those are some easy ones. So now let's take it a step further and add a coefficient in front. Oops, I wrote that wrong. I'm sorry. Okay, So the first thing I do is I draw lines in front of my capital letters. So I have nitrogen and oxygen. Now, with the coefficient, it involves one extra step. So I'm going to ignore my coefficient to begin with for now. So now I look at my subscripts. So I have 4 atoms of nitrogen and 10 atoms of oxygen. Now, to get the total, you have to multiply the coefficient by each subscript. So I'm going to go 3 times 4 and then 3 times 10. So my total nitrogen is 12 and my total oxygen is 30. Okay, let's do another one. Okay, so first thing, I'm going to draw lines in front of my capital letters. So the elements I have are carbon and sulfur. So ignoring the coefficient for just a moment, I have 2 atoms of carbon, 2 atoms of sulfur. Now, I'm going to add in my, multiply each subscript by the coefficient. So it's 7 times 2 and 7 times 2. So you're going to have 14 carbon, 14 sulfur. All right, let's do another one. Okay. So I drop my lines in front of my capital letters. I'm going to ignore my 4 for now. So I have Fe, iron, and oxygen. All right, so I'm going to look at my subscripts. I have 2 atoms of oxygen and 2 atoms of iron, 3 atoms of oxygen. Now I have to multiply each subscript by the 4, the coefficient. So 4 times 2 is 8, 4 times 3 is 12. All right, I'm going to do one more, then I'm going to add in some parentheses, and we'll do some practice with that as well. All right, so I'm going to draw lines in front of my capital letters. Now, you don't need to do that. I'm just teaching it this way, so maybe it will help you, okay? So I'm going to ignore my coefficient for now. So I have Na, H, C, and O. So first thing I do is look at my subscripts. Sodium does not have a subscript, so that means it's 1. Hydrogen does not have a subscript. That also means 1. Carbon does not have a subscript, so that also means 1. Oxygen does. It has a 3. Okay, so now I have to multiply my coefficient by each subscript. So 3 times 1, 3 times 1, 3 times 1, and 3 times 3. So my total atoms of sodium is 3. I have 3 atoms of hydrogen, 3 atoms of oxygen. 3 atoms of carbon. 3 atoms of carbon, 9 atoms of oxygen. Okay. All right, so now we're going to step it up and make it just a little bit more involved. And that's the ones that have parentheses. Okay, so the first thing I do, I'm going to drop my lines in front of my capital letters. So I have nitrogen and hydrogen. So now, just like in math, you do your parentheses first. Anything, the subscript outside of the parentheses only applies to the elements inside, okay? And you multiply. So nitrogen has a subscript of 1 because there isn't anything there. So you do 1 times 3, and here you do 4 times 3. So you have 12 and 3, okay? And then since you have another nitrogen out here, we're going to go ahead and add that in. So now you have 4. Okay. So now you multiply the 2 times the 4, and then the 2 times your 12. So I have 8 nitrogen and 24 hydrogen. Okay, let's do another one. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is draw lines in front of my capital letters. So I have barium, Ba, Mn, and O. All right, so I'm going to ignore the coefficient for just a moment. Everything in the parentheses gets multiplied by the 2. So Mn has no subscript, so it's 1. So 2 times 1 is going to be 2. 2 times 4 is 8. Okay. Now I have to multiply my coefficient times each subscript. Okay. So barium does not have a subscript, so it's 1. So it's 6 times 1 for the barium, 6 times 2, and then 6 times 8. So total, I have 6 barium, 12 manganese, and 48 oxygen. Okay, I'm going to do one more. Okay. Now I'm going to do this one just a little bit differently, just to show you a different way to do it. Okay, whatever works for you, you use that. Okay. So sometimes what I encourage students do when the parentheses get a little confusing is you can also rewrite your formula without the parentheses and then add in your coefficient. So let me show you. Okay, so we're going to ignore this first and deal with our parentheses. So the 2 gets multiplied by every subscript. So if there's no subscript, that's 1. So for Si, 2 times 1 is 2. For the oxygen, 2 times 3 is 6. Then I bring in my Al. Okay, so now I've gotten rid of my parentheses. Now I draw my lines in front of my capital letters. So I have aluminum, Si, and oxygen. Now the coefficient has to be multiplied by every single subscript. So 5 times 2, 5 times 2, and 5 times 6. So my total aluminum is 10, 10, and 30. Okay, I'm going to do one more and then I will end this video. Okay, so I'm going to ignore this for just a moment. and deal with my parentheses. So for the iodine, there is no subscript, so that means 1. So 3 times 1 is 3, and then 3 times 3 is 9. Then I add my gold, okay? So now I've rewritten that formula. So now draw lines in front of my capital letters, and now I'm going to look at my subscripts. There's no subscript under the AU, the gold, so it's 1. The iodine has a subscript of 3, and the O has a subscript of 9. So then you multiply. 4 times 1, 4 times 3, and 4 times 9. So my total atoms of gold is 4. My total atoms of iodine are 12. And my total atoms of oxygen is 36. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that was helpful for you. It's just a short video just to recap how to count atoms. So I will be doing a full review video of the chemistry unit, and that will be posted sometime this weekend, definitely by Monday, which is April 12th, I believe. What is Monday? Check. April 11th. Your video will be posted so you can watch it, and your test is April 13th.